Yo, what is up, guys? Del Boy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, a quick preview and prediction for a rather interesting welterweight fight between Kudratillo Abdukakhorov and Sergey Lipinets. This fight goes down on the 10th of October, and the IBF interim welterweight title will be on the line. Essentially, this fight is an eliminator for Errol Spence's IBF welterweight title. But yeah, in my opinion, this is a really interesting fight. Let's briefly talk about the tail of the tape. We shall start with Sergey Lipinets. Sergey Lipinets has a record of 16 wins, 1 defeat, 0 draws. 12 of those 16 wins coming by way of knockout. Lipinets was actually a former super lightweight champion. Kudratillo Abdukakhorov has a perfect record of 17-0. 9 of those 17 wins coming by way of knockout. Sergey Lipinets is listed as 5'7" with a 67-inch reach, whereas Kudratillo Abdukakhorov is listed as 5'9.5", but his reach isn't actually listed anywhere. But certainly by the tail of the tape, Abdukakhorov is the bigger guy. He's got a 2.5-inch reach advantage, and he's a more natural welterweight. Abdukakhorov has fought his whole career at welterweight, whereas Sergey Lipinets obviously started at 140 pounds. So Abdukakhorov is certainly the bigger welterweight. He's taller, and I would say he's got the longer arms as well. Sergey Lipinets is an orthodox fighter, and he is 31 years old, whereas Kudratillo Abdukakhorov is 27 years old, and he is listed as an orthodox fighter, and that is primarily what he is. But Abdukakhorov can actually switch hit. He can go to the southpaw stance, and he's pretty effective in that stance as well, which is an interesting point going into this fight. But yeah, interesting fight in my opinion. I believe this fight should gel quite well, and it should be fairly entertaining. Both guys are naturally pretty aggressive, and I think they'll play off each other, and I think it will make for a really good fight. But stylistically, this one is going to be very interesting in my opinion. I see this fight as a 50-50, and in my opinion, it's extremely hard to break down and pick a definite winner. I think this one is a 50-50, I really do, and it's a really, really good fight. Stylistically, it's going to be interesting to see who can impose their will on the other. Both guys are aggressive. I would say Lipinets is more relentless, and his pressure is more constant. I think he takes more risks. He's not as methodical as Abdukakhorov. Lipinets coming forwards is actually quite awkward. He will apply pressure with a jab, and he can actually throw some really effective feints on the front foot. And he comes in quite compact, quite low down, and his stance is real weird. You can tell this guy was a former kickboxer by his stance, the way he kind of throws shots, etc. And it makes for a really awkward night for anybody. Lipinets was giving Mikey Garcia some real problems, based on his pressure, his feints, and his jab. So Lipinets, in my opinion, is certainly a fairly effective pressure fighter, and I think mainly that is due to the constant nature of his pressure and how awkward he is. Whereas Kudratillo Abdukakhorov, I would still call him a pressure fighter, but in my opinion he's a lot more measured than Sergey Lipinets, not quite as relentless, and he kind of picks his moments when to apply pressure. Sometimes he will box, and sometimes he will apply pressure. When Abdukakhorov does really kind of unload and throw combinations and apply pressure, one thing he kind of negates in my opinion is his jab. He'll come forwards, he'll apply pressure, but he won't really use his jab. He does have a habit of leading off with power shots, whether it be like the hook or the straight right hand. But yeah, coming forwards, Abdukakhorov does actually neglect his jab quite badly. And, against someone like Lipinets, I'm not sure that's really wise, to be honest. If we're talking about the pressure game, I actually think Lipinets is a better pressure fighter than Abdukakhorov. However, I do actually believe Abdukakhorov has more fundamental boxing skills between the two. And obviously, I think that stems from the fact that Lipinets was a kickboxer before a boxer. I think Abdukakhorov is actually more well-schooled, to be honest. So, if Abdukakhorov decides to meet Lipinets in the centre of a ring, I think there's a very good chance he could get beat in this fight, to be honest. I'm not sure whether he can match Lipinets' pace, to be honest with you. And quite frankly, I'm not actually sure whether he actually hits as hard as Lipinets. So in a war, I think he could actually come off worse. So if I was Abdukakhorov, or if I was training him, I would actually get him to box a little bit more in this fight. Obviously, there's going to be times where Abdukakhorov has to fight with Lipinets, to keep him at bay and to keep him honest, but I would be trying to box a lot more in this fight. Obviously, the key to that is using that jab, using a consistent jab. Abdukakhorov does have a good jab, he's just not consistent with it. I think if he uses that jab consistently in this fight, he actually does have a good chance in this one. And obviously combining that with his effective switching of the stances from orthodox to southpaw, I think he can keep Lipinets at bay. And I think he can keep Lipinets off balance, keep him turning and just keep on picking him off. Lipinets isn't exactly the greatest outboxer in the world. I don't think it's going to take a Sugar Ray Leonard to outbox this guy. I actually believe Abdukakhorov has the skill set to win rounds based off a jab and based off his boxing skills. Funnily enough, when this fight was made, I was always siding with Lipinets. But, the closer this fight has got, I'm really second guessing that, to be honest. And I'm making this prediction video now, but even now I'm still not sure. And that means it's a very good fight as far as I'm concerned. When you're not sure about the outcome, that means it's a good fight. But yeah, it's a really hard one to call, but I'm going to assume that Lipinets is obviously going to play his role in this fight, what he usually does, and apply pressure. But I think Abdukakhorov is going to switch it up a bit in this fight. I think he's going to box a lot more than we've seen in the few fights of his past. And if he does that, I think he's got a great chance to win this fight, because he actually comes in there with pretty good activity anyway, so I think he's got enough to actually outpoint Lipinets in enough rounds to win this fight. I do think Lipinets is a guy who can be outboxed. Obviously, we saw that against Mikey Garcia. Now, Lipinets did do well in that fight. He gave Mikey a lot of problems, but ultimately Lipinets could never really, get past that jab to the extent where he won the fight. And even against a guy called Eric Bonet, Lipinets really struggled in that fight. Bonet's a pretty good boxer, and Lipinets was really struggling with his style. I think if you can keep your feet moving against Lipinets, keep the range effectively, then Lipinets is going to struggle because he's not particularly great on the outside. Lipinets needs to get up close and he needs to fight on the inside. He needs to get on your chest so he can work the body with his short shots, come up through the middle with uppercuts, and he'll basically try and break you down that way. So yeah, the key is for Abdukakhorov is to keep Lipinets on the outside. That's easier said than done because Lipinets does have pretty quick feet. He's effective at kind of feinting, drawing your jab, slipping under and getting on the inside. So Abdukakhorov needs to be aware of that. But I believe he's got the skill set to win this fight. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be competitive. Maybe even one of those fights where people debate the decision. People could see it going either way kind of thing. But I'm going to go with a Kudratillo Abdukakhorov points win. Now, like I said, I've been leaning towards Sergey Lipinets this whole time. But now, as I think about this fight more and more, something tells me that Abdukakhorov is going to pull this one off. But we'll see, man. We'll see. One more thing to consider, though. Sergey Lipinets has certainly fought for better competition. I mean, Lipinets has fought guys like Lamont Peterson. I know he was past his best, but he's still a name. He's fought Mikey Garcia, even guys like Akira Kondo and Eric Bonet. These are pretty decent guys. So Lipinets has certainly fought for better competition. If you look at Abdukakhorov's resume, his best win is a faded Louis Collazo. So Lipinets is certainly more proven and more experienced in the pros. He's certainly more battle-tested, so we do need to consider that. But ultimately, my final prediction in this fight is a Kudratillo Abdukakhorov points win. Going to be close, going to be competitive, but I've got Abdukakhorov on points. I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts on this fight. Who do you have winning? Are you going with Lipinets or are you going with Kudratillo Abdukakhorov? By the way, I actually do believe a draw could be a realistic scenario on this fight as well, but I'm going to go with Abdukakhorov on points. Share your thoughts below. Been your boy Del Boy. Peace.